You're now tuned into Underdog Talk podcast with your host, Eric Jones Jr., the underdog with a heroic heart, where we have conversations with successful underdogs. And today we have Pastor Norell Taylor. How's it going?
Man, it's going well, man.
That's good. That's good. Let's get right on into it. So, how was it growing up in Hallville? And then Indianapolis, Hallville is kind of a bad area. It's still a bad area. You know, he's a little. You can see he's a little older. He got the gray. So back then it was still bad, and it's still
a little wiser.
Yeah, a little wiser. He's seasoned, as my mom would say.
Yeah.
But how was it growing up as a child? How was your lifehood?
Yeah, man, it was difficult. Indianapolis, Indiana, 46222. That's the zip code. That's funny. That's our ministry area now that we plan to intend to go in and reach the community. But man, I guess, man, the west side of Indianapolis, man, back 1985, crack really destroyed our community, and it didn't bypass my home. My mom, became a crack addict. Later passed it down to my sister. She passed it down to her son. And so, being in that, I was a part of that. I never actually did drugs, but participated in activities around drugs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, drug violence, all kind of stuff, man, in our community. And then we grew up somewhat poor, man. Mother just got Social Security and grew up like that. So, say least, man, it was a scarcity with food. Little bitty guy, man, bullied all the time in school. Learned how to fight, learned how to, channel that energy to athletics. But yeah, outside of that, man, just a tough upbringing. Came out the gutter, man, to where I'm at now.
I totally understand some of that. Where I'm from, Michigan City, Indiana, where my grandparents lived, there was a lot of crackheads and different stuff. So at a young age, I was seeing that stuff. So was your father present?
No, man, my father died, man, at the age of 6. And so he really wasn't in our lives. My mom, it was funny, man. It seemed to me that the Taylor family was going to be the typical American family. My dad and mom, high school little sweethearts and things of that nature, man. And just my sister and I. So you had the daughter, my older sister, 2 years older than me, and me. I'm the third. And so I'm thinking, man, I didn't know that at 6, as I retrospectively look back. I mean, it was the ideal family. And my dad, I guess, had mental challenges and issues and divorced my mom, moved on. And that created the rift of, statistically, man, not having that father in the home, destroys the family. Left us unprotected, my sister, my mom, therefore led to, a lot of molestation, a lot of, bad relationships, watching abuse and all that. So at 6 years old, my father died. Not sure what he died from. Some suggest it was syphilis. Didn't know him, but at 6 years old, man, I'm fatherless. And my sister is uncovered as well.
I definitely can relate. My biological father passed when I was 4. He passed of cancer. So I know how that is to kind of be young. You might know your dad. You kind of do. You still kind of young, and then boom, he's gone. So I definitely understand that. So I did a little research. You used to, when you was wrestling, I was looking it up. You was in, you said you channeled it to wrestling, and it was kind of good. You was kind of good. I looked at your record. So, but when I was looking, it said Herb. So yeah. Who was Herb back in the day? Who was that? Who was that?
Yeah. So it really started, man. Herbie, Herb Love Bug. So yeah, my full name is Herbert Norell Taylor the third. And so Herbert didn't really stick per se, and so it was Herb, all the way up until graduating from high school. But most of the females and most of my family members started calling me Norell. I started going by my middle name, and now I go by Pastor H. Norell Taylor. And so I'm giving away secrets, but to when I went to check out what my name actually meant, Herbert, outside of wrestling, but it actually means ruler of a mighty army. And I think that, man, being an under shepherd of God's house, God's church, I feel God has made me somewhat a ruler of a mighty army. So my name is somewhat prophetic.
Yeah.
if you will. Yeah. So man, yeah, wrestling, man. Excuse me, that was my thing, man. I wrestled. It kept me off the streets, man. Coach Goddard was my junior high coach. I wanted to play basketball like most black guys. I was pretty good, man. I was on the Junior Globetrotters in the 6th and 7th grade. I traveled and did a bunch of stuff with the Junior Globetrotters, and loved basketball. Played on a lot of teams, but I just didn't grow. So I shifted my energy toward wrestling and wrestled year round, summer. I've traveled, man, just by sponsors. People sponsor me. Like I said, we were poor, man, and so Coach Goddard, made sure I made it in spaces. Mark Mayer, his mom and dad, and Sean Kubel, his mom and dad. They just these were white families, man, that made sure that I was going to have a successful, at least wrestling career, if you will. And so if without them, man, that helped those families, man, I'll never forget. I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
So you without people that didn't look like you, because back then, being black and then being white is like, nah, you don't really, get along with each other. But it wasn't really about color. It was about them seeing your potential and understanding that you had some potential. You just didn't have the resources. And I think a lot of people back then didn't help others when they were able to. And still now, I mean, you still have people that help more nowadays. But sometimes you got to help people no matter what they look like, who they are, if you can help them, just because you never know how that can change their life. So you wrestled, it was like 91, 92, I think you graduated.
Yes.
And it's 2022, and you're number 11 on the percentage winning list at your high school. And I was like, oh, okay. So Pastor, he got down with the get down. I think it was 83%, 83.17 is your percentage. It's somebody a little higher than you, but that's very good. That means you did your thing. So when it came to wrestling, because you really didn't hear, or I don't know too many people in high school that wrestled. So how was that, like, training wise? Like, what did you have to do to be as good as you were? Like, what was
man, I think it's the main thing of wrestling is more so of a mentality. And it's really three things I say that will make you a successful wrestler: stamina, some strength, but ultimately situations or positioning. And so once I figured out that I could be stronger than a cat, I could have a little bit more endurance than a cat, but if I'm out of position and not in the right position and moving correctly, there's no way I could be top 5 athletes or wrestlers in the state. And so one of the reasons why my percentage is low, because I was just so small my sophomore year. For Ben Davis, they didn't have a freshman class. And so I came in my sophomore year weighing 92 pounds, wrestling 103. And so for the most part, my wrestlers out there, they know normally people cut 20 pounds or whatever. So I'm weighing 92, soaking wet, wrestling a guy who's cut 20 pounds to get to 103. So I'm wrestling a guy actually probably 30 pounds bigger than me and competing. And so, my sophomore year was a little tough. I went, I think, 10-9. So that messed up my percentage.
Because that's half of your losses.
Yeah, that's it right there. So, but my junior year, I went 43-1 and lost my last 2 matches in the state semifinals.
Yeah, I seen that.
And actually gave up the win at the end because I didn't care about 3rd and 4th. And then I did the same thing my senior year. Pretty much was like 34-3. So those losses, the losses that I had, man, they were against top 1 and 2, contenders, in the state. So I was pretty decent, man, wrestling. But I think it was a mentality I had, man, and really what made me, I think, a good wrestler was I saw, Chandra Lee, she says this all the time herself: you got to see it before you can see it. And that is so pertinent and powerful because I didn't see examples, right? And so that's why it's very incumbent and imperative that as a father, as a leader, as whoever you are, People are watching you, and they need to be able to see an example. And when I was a sophomore, I saw Sherman Woodard. Right, he's now a counselor at Ben Davis High School, graduate of Purdue, very educated black man, strong black man, love him to life to this day. I watched him his senior year, and I just mimicked his tenacity, his grit, his bullying on the mat. And I said, man, if I could encapsulate what I just watched this brother do, I'm gonna go into this next year as Sherman Woodard. That's what I said I was gonna do. I said I'm going in this year as Sherman Woodard. They gonna call me Herbie, but I'm Sherman Woodard. They don't even know. And I mimicked his tenacity. I packaged it up into my own stuff, moves that I had. But my whole mentality was I was Sherman Woodard my junior year. And man, I remember I was 10-0, lost my first match in the finals of county. I was in the finals of county, lost my first match, and then I went on to rattle off and get all the way to the semifinals of state, 43-1, number one in the state. Just off of looking at him, I could see. I said, well, as Maya Angelou said, if he's been made in the imago Dei, in the image of God, and has creative genius, I got it too. And that's why to see it, you got to see it in order to see it.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. And that's been my whole life. Whether I watch a father, not having a father, I just saw what they did, packaged it up, said I don't want to do that, and that I wouldn't want to feel like that as a son. So let me do this as a father. That's how I learned. You know, I'm preaching. I got to see this. I saw it. Said, well, if he can do it, what did it take for him or her to be able to step up, not being really sharp academically, because I wasn't a really strong student in high school. And I think that wasn't because I lack intellect. I think I lack opportunity. And you got to understand, going to school, I went to school every day hungry. Literally hungry every day. For the 1st and the 5th of every month, we had food. But by the 6th of the month, no food was in the house. I'm talking about no bread, no milk. Like, I would go to my neighbors and say, do y'all have any bologna? Do y'all have any, can I get 2 pieces of bread? Y'all got any chips? I would hang out at my friend's house, man, just to eat.
I feel you.
They knew I was there just to eat. We would play outside, go in the house. I'd be sitting around, and they already know. Sit down, little Herb. I know you want something to eat, and yeah, that's how it went, man. And so you imagine that, not being able to eat, not having an example, not having all of that, and so it was really no purpose for me to really want to do anything outside of what I had already experienced. It was I really didn't have the drive. I didn't have the focus. And so academics, the only thing that kept me off the streets and kept me in the classroom was I had to have a certain grade in order to do what I wanted to do. So wrestling really saved my life, man.
I like that, because most of the time you hear someone, a black young man, talking about football or basketball or something else that helped you. And I totally understand when you said 92 pounds. I didn't get to being 100 pounds until 10th grade. And I wasn't even 5 foot until I was 10th grade. So I understand the stature of being small, but having the intellect, the inner strength to, overcome. Now, and what you said was you watched someone that was already winning. A lot of times you just watch people. You got to watch people that's winning, because you could have watched maybe your friend Russell. He was a little older. You could have watched him. He was okie dokie, and you could have went in and nothing would have happened. You would have been that same 10-9 person as the last year, but you went, watched the top guy, and it wasn't like you was hating. You was like, hey, how you do this? Do. Or you just watching them so you can get better. And another thing you said was when it comes to being a father, you could have an example or you don't have an example. You got to be able to package it how it looks for you, because every child, every situation is different because you could have 3 children. Each one of them kids is different, and you got to operate in a different pattern. Mm-hmm. So didn't do all that well in school. What was your goals at high school? What was it looking like for you? What did you want to do?
Yeah, I think, man, my wrestling coach Tony Starks, and not Iron Man. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that this dude's name was Tony Starks. Mm-hmm. So I said it to somebody, and they said Iron Man. I said, wait a minute, that is Tony Stark. I didn't realize it was Coach Stark, Tony Starks, Iron Man. Yeah, man. And so it wasn't until he told me, man, one time, it was a summer that Steve Amos was shot and killed right around the corner from my house. And I used to hang with Steve Amos, and all of us hung together. Shout out to the Amos family. And he got shot and killed that summer, 1991. He got killed that summer. And my coach told me that if I don't get out of Hallville, I'll be dead. Mm. He told me that my sophomore year, and I enlisted in the military my junior year, and went to basic training. While in basic training in South Carolina, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, I got the report back that Steve Amos was killed, man. Mm. And I would have been there that summer if I had not left. And it just impacted me so much that I realized, man, if I didn't work hard enough to be able to have the grades to get into some level of higher academia, I could be the next young black man killed out here. Because I've had drive-bys on my home in Indianapolis, just crazy stuff, man. And so I knew I needed to come up with some type of plan to get out of here. Mm-hmm. And so I had 2 plans at that time. I had the military, and then I had wrestling. And so I knew I was going to go to college on either one. So academically, didn't have the grades to go to a particular Division I. I had the skill set to probably wrestle at a Division II, but I was still too small. In my senior year, I wrestled 112. Mm. The lowest weight in college is 118. And once again, these rascals are dropping down 30 pounds to be 118. So I'm going to wrestle somebody 150. And I'm a little bitty one, So, and that's going to be a whole different thing. Yeah. And so I knew I needed to grow and mature again. But yeah, man, I think that the focus of my junior and senior year, I strapped up and said, okay, I got enough credits. I didn't have a good study habit. Didn't feel confident in myself academically, but I knew I had some type of intellect without going home, doing homework, reading, doing nothing. I never studied ever in high school. Never. I never studied. Still got out with like a 2.2. Got out that piece enough to go to Grand Rapids Community College and wrestle for about a semester before I came home. And so here's a transitional piece too that I know you'll probably ask about the father piece, is that during that time, man, I had got a sister pregnant, Jody Wilson, my junior year. And so she was pregnant my junior year. And by the time I got back from the military, I'm looking at my son being born February 1991. February 18, 1991. And so Cordero, man, Darwin Taylor is born. I got a whole son as a junior. And so with him, I realized that once that he came into the world, I realized I'm gonna need to shift some stuff, and so, even though I graduated, went to college immediately, wrestled, was in the military at the same time, doing National Guard stuff, and then wrestling, and then in school, I realized, man, I needed to get back to Indianapolis because my son needed me too, and so at that time he's roughly 2, going on 2, so that's what kind of brought me back to Indianapolis, but I didn't go back to Hallville. I kind of moved out of that space and tried to get away from that, but that drug life and the streets still were calling me. And so even though I was, in school, working, military, still hustling. out in these streets. And so I did that for about 3 or 4 years, before the Lord got a hold of me.
So you got a son. You had not dreams, but you had goals to either go. You went to the military, wrestle, and you realized you had a bigger responsibility than what you thought you were going to do. So when you came back, were you like active immediately, or did it take something to get you, or how was that relationship once you got back with your son?
Yeah, man, I think it was a tension between didn't know if he was mine or not, initially, but his grandmother didn't want me to sing. It's a long backstory with that, but so I just went down to the city county building, man, and ordered a blood test, put myself on child support, said I need my son. He needs me in his life, whether his grandmother want me to or not. And so I forced that piece to where now I could get visitations on the weekends, because his mother was young, man. I was 17, 18. She was 16, or 17, 16, 18, 17. And so she was young, man. And so her mother was still like, she's 17, she ain't grown yet or whatever. She got a whole little 2-year-old and all that. And it turned into a space to where I knew I needed to just go ahead and put myself on child support. And get those visitations. And that's what I did, man. And just started getting him. I remember the first day I picked him up, he's like 2 years old. And I not just seeing him as a baby and kind of growing up and going over there every now and again. She's sneaking him out the house, letting me see him. But it was like, he's like 1.5. And now I remember taking him to the mall and just buying him some Jordans and all kind of stuff and walking him through the mall. And this is my little shorty, man. I'm only 18 and walking a little shorty. And that's when fatherhood began. That he's just steady looking up at me, and the whole time I'm looking down at him, he's looking up at me, and that's been going on for 30 years. I'm looking down at him, he's looking up at me. That's the same thing's been going on for 30 years.
I totally understand that look. CJ, give me that look. Yeah. So you did everything you was supposed to. A lot of guys, you don't hear that though. Put yourself on child support because the system ain't for them. It's not for the men. It's more so for the women. So if you're not on child support and you not cool with the mother of your child, it's gonna be hard if you got to go through that, or if you got family members doing crazy stuff. Luckily, I never had to go through that kind of thing with Christian's mom. But so now you active. Now what you doing with your life? No more wrestling. The military gone. What happens in the next few years after you come home? You in your son's life. Now you gotta becoming a real adult and get a job, get a crib, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, man. So the transition is when I came back and quit somewhat college and just quit Grand Rapids and wrestling and just said I'm done with wrestling. It was hard for me to just say I'm done with wrestling because that was my identity. Mm-hmm. But then I came back, went to IUPUI. I knew I needed to pluck away college courses. I don't know why my drive was so strong just to continue to take a course. Mm-hmm. I never stopped taking courses. Just immediately enrolled at IUPUI. The military was paying for it with the GI Bill. I was in the National Guard. And so I stayed in the military for 9 years. I didn't get out of the military until 2000. Right before 9/11. Okay. So I was there 9 years, honorable discharge, all that, disabled vet now. But when I came back, IU, working, taking care of my son, just all the way legit. But during that time, I lost a few jobs, got caught up, and then I got caught up in the drug game. And I did that for about 2 years, and was really successful doing that stuff. That's when I realized I had an entrepreneurial spirit, right? Because it was like, it was mathing. This math was mathing. I said, wait a minute. But it's funny because my sister and my mom were destroyed by this particular, drug. And I'm out here doing it. Hypocrisy at its finest. And so here was here's the transitional turning really of my whole life is that I'm at drill. It's 1996. I'm at National Guard drill, and it's been reported that for the first time in 100 years, the Indiana National Guard is going to be deployed to Bosnia Herzegovina, Operation Joint Endeavor. I volunteered to go. I don't know why. Somebody told me they're going to give us an extra $50,000 if we went. I believed them. And I said, so I get paid, and they're going to give me an extra $50,000. Yeah, I'm going to go. So, I called my baby's mom at the time. At this time, I got Herbert. Herbert's was born in 96. So Herbert's roughly like 6 months old at the time. So I got Cordero. He's I'm thinking 96, so he's like 6 or 7, 5 or 6, and then Herbert's born in 96, so he's 6 months old, and so me and his mom were together like 7 years, and I call her and say I'm going to war. Like, what? Yeah, I'm going to war. So long story short, man, I get over to Bosnia Herzegovina. And my man Willie Brox, he's our treasurer at New Living Bible Church right now. Been with me day one. And when we started New Living Bible Church, he was one of my first members. Matter of fact, he's one of the first members that came and helped us open up a bank account. And so the whole time traveling over there, Willie is saying, come to church with me, trying to get me to go to church with him. When he went to church along the way at some spots, we get over to Bosnia. He says, man, go to church with me. I said, man, okay, I'm going to go. So I get up and go with him on Sunday morning. I'm sitting there minding my own business, and the preacher just preaches no more excuses. I said, what in the mess is going on? And I felt, man, like it was a bunch of people in that piece. I said, this brother talking to me directly. I didn't know what was going on, but I said, my God. And man, all I know is I got up in tears, lifted my hands, received the Holy Ghost, Doc, and just confessed Christ. He told me, man, confess Christ, receive the gift of the Holy Spirit, all that stuff, and instantaneously, man, I got it all, man. God, the Spirit, all that, and that changed the trajectory of my life. I felt completely different. I felt redeemed. I felt forgiven, right? And so that started my journey, man. Just people just pouring in me and discipling me, and over that 9-month period, I got CDs from Jeffrey Johnson, Eastern Star Church, where Willie gave them to me. And that's why I learned expository preaching and began to, once again, I had to see it in order to see it. At that moment, I'm hearing it in order to see it, right? I'm hearing it. And I'm listening to this guy preach. It was Jeffrey Johnson in 1996. You ever go back and listen to any of his sermons in 1996? And I mean, this brother was a genius. He still is my favorite preacher. Just a homiletical genius. And man, I listened to him. I said, I didn't know what alliterations were at the time, but I said every word he's using, like if he got a P starts with every point, then he got a T start with every point, and there's an I start with every point. Then he opens up with the same prayer. As you notice, I do my same prayer every time I begin to preach. And I said, I found out, what's the purpose of that? I try to tell my young preachers that they need to do that too, because they don't need to be praying altar prayers right before they preach. They just need to ask God what they want him to do specifically in that moment. And let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be accepted when I sight. Lord, be my strength and my redeemer. I said, wow, that's what he say that every time. Come on, say that same prayer. I said, wow, I never heard preachers do like that. And just with intellectual genius, I said once again, if he can do that,
you can.
Yeah, go right back to Sherman Woodard. Goes back to Jeffrey Johnson. Goes back to, Freddie Haynes. It goes, whatever. I'm looking, saying E.V. Hill. Whatever. I'm just saying, you got to see it to see it. And that became, the transitional piece for me, coming back from Bosnia. So when I got back home from Bosnia, My life had changed, man. I got back, and all my clients, they was like still waiting on the brother. It was over, and and I got back, man, and my whole thought life and worldview had changed. I realized that even in '96, in those 9 months of being away from the United States and then getting back into these yet to be United States, divided states, if you will, of America, man, that was my preparatory ground, man. All that pain and all that trauma and all that molestation that happened when I was 9, and mother on crack, dad dying at 6, all this stuff, man. Being in a tough neighborhood, being in a predominantly white school with white friends who love me, that protected me from hating white people, right? And even racism was there, but I have so many white folk that loved me and still love me today, and if I wouldn't be who I am, without Mr. Cubel, Sean Cubel's dad getting me into the military, and so man, it's just and so that shaped me to now where I'm at today. Planting has successfully planted a multicultural, multi-ethnic ministry, all nations, all tribes and tongues, and new living. So that's what brought me here today.
So, if it wasn't for Willie, it might be no new living. It might not be us sitting here and having this conversation. So, shout out to Willie for that. You need friends like that to push you to what you don't know, what you don't see. Because sometimes people see things in you that you don't even see. And he was just being a friend, like, come on, man, I go to church, you come on to church with me. And boom, God was right there. So
yeah, he told me, man, I'm interrupting. He told me later, man, that he had always saw greatness in me. He told me that. And you never know who's watching you. That goes back again. That he had been watching me all those years in the National Guard. Just saw my leadership, saw me as a person, and he saw beyond and what I could see, and man, yeah, that's why he wouldn't leave me alone.
Yeah.
And we get over there, he man, you gotta go to church with me, and that turns into now I'm serving him as his pastor.
Yeah.
I mean, just the story is just so providential, like God literally placing this person that beside me that will not stop until I get to a place to meet God. And it wasn't church, it was like get to a place. You got to get to a place where you can meet God.
Yep. Right?
And it was crazy. And I just went back and remember all the mile markers of him asking me, and I think Sergeant Jones, the first, I remember this too. When we were leaving, just this quick story, when we were getting ready to deploy, and I remember that later after God called me, after God called me home and I started walking with the Lord, I remember I said, dang, when we were preparing our wheels and living wheels and our trust and all this stuff, before because you got to do all that stuff before you leave. So if you die, people get the money and all that stuff. And I didn't have one of those set up, so they set you up when you get deployed. And I remember sitting outside waiting to walk in, and Sergeant Jones, he said, "Are you ready to die?" He asked me that. Now I didn't know later he's a Christian. I was actually in his wedding and all that. And he was over there at the time too, man. He wasn't stationed with us, so he couldn't go to church with us, but he was a Christian. And I remember that was the first time God was using that moment. He said, "Are you ready to?" I was like, I don't really know. I get it. And that's why I'm doing this wheel. So if we don't make it back, somebody gonna get paid out here. But yeah, I remember he said that, and later on, but I remember the whole time, Brother Eric, after he said that to me, I felt like I was going to die the whole time. But watch this, and as I look back over it, I did.
Yep.
I died, over in Bosnia. The old me died. When I came back, it was a new me, man, and it was true new.
Yeah, and it like you said, you never know who's watching you. You never know who sees what potential that you have to push you to, being your greatness or being wherever you're supposed to be. Because just him inviting you to church, God was able to talk to you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
say you, no, I ain't gonna go, and you missed out on your opportunity because God was waiting for you. You wasn't necessarily like in a church building or all that. It was just hearing the word, and it was like, hey, come on, I need to holler at you. You that owed you. We gotta put that away. So you get back, and really, who was, or did you have an example? Like father figure, your friend's father, somebody you saw in your neighborhood, or was it you just kind of trial and errored it?
Yeah, basically, man, it was really just some church folk. As I started not having a father, that created a lot of church hurt for me because I started trying to make people in church be that. I wanted, once I started reading the Word of God and it was saying stuff like family, brothers and sisters in Christ, I was like, hold on, family, brothers and sisters, we army of God. And I said, oh, that makes sense. I'm in the army. Everybody moves over in the Bosnia. Everybody had on BDUs. All I had on these army gear, fighting stuff. I'm like, oh, I'm with this. I'm in the army. I'm all about athletics. I'm about teamwork makes the dream work. I'm all that. And so I'm looking at the church to reflect all of that, and it wasn't. And so it was extremely disappointing because I was wanting my pastor to be the father, and at the time he wasn't set up like that at Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church. Dr. Wayne Harris, rest in peace with him. Watched him preach and teach. I joined that church because that was the church in Hallville, and I felt like God was calling me to be still in Hallville with those relationships, and all my former friends I knew and people who were saved were attending Mount Olive Baptist Church. And man, I just started looking for men to be examples, and then that was my first experience per se of seeing, some homosexuality stuff in church, and still knowing that the church was still loving at the time. It wasn't a condemning church, and knew that I didn't understand that then, and so some churches were really dogmatic, but Mount Olive wasn't necessarily like accepting, but they wouldn't kicking them to the curb. And so I saw that, but then at the same time, I saw men not being men, and then women, being one thing in church and not in church. And so it just became it was confusing because when in Bosnia, that was like, we were really like, they was really doing church. It really was nothing else there. Mm-hmm. But when I got home and joined church, it was just really hard to find an example. But I ended up finding a guy, Tommy, and him and his wife, I can't remember her name right now, but they initially saw something in me, man, and pulled me close, got me in some leadership stuff, and I got saved in '96, and God called me to preach in '97. So I told my pastor, I was like, I'd already been prophesied over when I was in Bosnia by my pastor. He said, man, don't nobody study the word like, read the word like you and ask all these questions like you. I was just inquisitive, man, and just was asking questions. How does this axe head floating? Tell me. Your brother axe heads don't float. How the mess? So you said Samuel tied all them things, them boxes up, and they ran across the field on fire. With the mess? You know what I'm saying? So I'm just like, I had all these questions, and how did the stone move away? And they thought it was two angels, then one angel. I was just asking all this stuff, and I was doing apologetics and asking. And then that turned into when I get home from Bosnia, I'm in Mount Olive. I go to my pastor and I said, man, I believe the Lord is calling me to preach. He said, how do you know that? I said, man, I read Second Timothy, chapter 4, and it was something like the guy said, preach the word in season, out of season, do the work of the evangelist, fulfill your ministry. And I said, I felt like the Lord said to me, preach the word. And he said, good answer. Come up in my office next Sunday. I go up in the office, and that was my journey. He put me in the office and with the other preachers, and then I started seeing what they did before service. And so I'm in there, they in there joking. Somebody's directed to do the prayer, lead the service. I'm sitting in there, bro. They watching old boy from Ohio, I forget his name, white brother. He was young then. He was preaching. He's killing it. That's who Harris would watch, I guess, before we go preach. He had him on. I'm just sitting there looking. I'm looking at them. Just then we walk out in a line, to get up on the stage, behind the pulpit and all that. And so I did that for like 3 or 4 months, and then I finally preached my first sermon in 1998 on Mother's Day, and my mother was there.
Mm.
You talking about a crackhead, and so, my family won't admit it now, but nobody was going to church, Brother Eric. Not one person. Brother Taylor gets saved. Everybody going to church now. You know what I'm saying? I just like my uncle going. He went from smoking weed and doing hip hop rap to changing his whole record label to Basic Records, Brothers and Sisters in Christ. He gets saved. My mother gave her life to Christ. My sister started going to church. My ex girls get baptized. I mean, my cousin starts going. Everybody starts going in the family. My little cousin Lily started going. So, I felt, man, that the Lord really used my life at that moment to set an example for some people in my family.
So you really didn't have, you had examples, but you didn't have examples, but you became the example for your family.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes it takes that one person. I think a lot of times, like with your friends, with your family, it takes that one person out the crew, out the family to do something, and they see, oh, that's what it looked like.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go try it out. He tried it out, and that's good that you were able to help your family, because as you said, y'all, you didn't have a good upbringing. Things was going wrong in the home. Things was going wrong in life just because of the area you lived in, and your friend Willie able to invite you to church. Now your whole family's in the church.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in the church. You're moving and grooving. You're starting to preach and everything. So do you get like your own church? Or are you still under somebody, and then go into like what fatherhood was like with teenage, like as your sons got a little bit older? Like how was that for you?
Yeah, so basically the ministry was it corresponded. It was tethered together. So it was ministry and family, but it was yeah, man, you watching steady watching folk preach your first sermon. Feel like you did really well, and that's where some church hurt happened, because at that point I just kind of wanted more from my pastor, and he couldn't, and so I realized I needed to probably get to a space where somebody would treat me, as a son in the ministry for real. And so that's when I left my knowledge and went to Corinthians with Pastor Terry Webster, and I learned how to pray through him, and found my big bro, who's my big brother today, More Shelton, still to this day, 20 plus years later. More Shelton, my big bro. He calls me little brother, little baby brother. Calls me baby brother. I call him big bro. And yeah, man, learned to pray through that. He became an example for me of prayer, of a married man, of a father, and watch how he flowed. IPL worker. So I'm watching this. I'm like, man, okay, here's a big bro. I got like a big brother, and now I got like a father per se in ministry with Pastor Terry Webster. And just watching him preach and his fire, his passion, him being an example, as a husband and as a father as well. Watching him, how he flowed in church, how he treated his wife, how he treated his kids, thorough but loving. Just watched all that, man, and I just mimicked it and watched it. And so at that point, I said, okay, cool. Watch how they did church. Watch how they dress. Watch how they talk. Watch how they walk. And became little Junebug. So we going to Dallas, traveling, doing all that. And so, those are the great things. And I have decided to not even think through the trauma of Mount Olive and how I felt and was hurt. And then even, New Corinthians now with Pastor Terry Webster, because if I never met him, I wouldn't be who I am today. And so I'm done with that piece of balancing out the hurt, but the help, if you will, right? I'm more so saying, okay, who am I because of him, right? And if I never met him, would I preach like I preach? Would I pray like I pray? Would I have a fire like I have? Would I be who I am today without Pastor Webster and Dr. Harris? No. And so I'm eternally indebted and grateful for knowing them and meeting them. And so from there, I end up leaving Corinthians. And at the time, Nicole, my wife, and I, we went and went to Solid Word. Because at this point, check this out, and I'll just say this real briefly. I'm on a journey at this time, just taken from people. This is what I mean. I'm taken from people. I take Pastor Harris's charisma, his intellect, his genius, 2 doctorate degrees in philosophy, so he knew how to work the crowd. I never heard him barely give a title. He just get up and sing and kill it and use his intellect, and just everybody fall all over the floor. I just was like, I don't even know what the mess going on. Then I went to Terry Webster, and he wasn't an intellectual giant. He wasn't like he's now. I think he's got his doctorate degree, but at the time he was just passionate, powerful entrepreneur, leader, prayer warrior, powerful man of God. And I'm just looking like, man. So I got Harris, I got him, and then I already had Jeffrey. So I had Jeffrey from 9 months of listening to him. Mm-hmm. So I already got my exposition. I already know how to formulate my sermons. Then I got this dude, Dr. Harris. Then I got Terry Webster. I'm like, I got all them. And so at that moment, I became a conglomerate of all of them in one. You see what I'm saying? I tell people I ain't no original. I'm a conglomerate of many. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, and so that's it. Yeah, I'm a mix. I'm a conglomerate of many, Doc. And so, I looked at all that. Boom, boom, boom. Grabbed all that. Took from him. Chris Shelton, my big bro, took from him as a prayer warrior. And then I finally got the icing on the cake when I went to Solid Word, because now I get this intellectual genius in Pastor Troy Smith, mm-hmm. and just a phenomenon to me. Just his memory, his recall of things, and just his leadership. And now I'm behind the scenes looking how to do counseling, looking how to do premarital, postmarital, looking how to lead a staff. And then I get an opportunity to come on staff. And that started the trajectory. So you got all these men who shaped me and molded me. And what you see today is them. That's mm-hmm. the crazy thing. Good, bad, and ugly. All of them I had bad situations with them. And if you think about it, mostly I would acknowledge today, I'm not lying, that most of the struggle was me. Mm-hmm. I'm the one hurt. I'm the one fatherless. I'm the one don't understand relationships. I'm the one taken from them. I'm the one that need them. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And so, as I look at that today in my life in church today, I know that a lot of that, some people may even blame me like I did, mm-hmm. right? That they need from me, yeah. right? And then when they hurt and all that, because they need a father, they need a good preacher, they need a passionate example, they need all this. And it was just like me, and you get hurt when they let you down. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? You get hurt. But if you really look at, did they make you better by meeting them? Yeah. Did Pastor Harris make me better? Did listening to and connecting with, Pastor Johnson to this day? Yeah. Like, did these brothers, Pastor Terry Webster, did he make me better? Yes. And so when I look at all that, man, and then to, 11 years later, from leaving Solid Word in 2009 and starting the church with no money, no members, no nothing, and Pastor Smith telling me, man, go out there and fly. It's time for you to go. Do your thing, man. God got you. I got your back. And I still felt hurt. I felt abandoned. I felt like he didn't have my back. No matter how he did it, that didn't have anything to do with him. It was me. Yeah. I'm the one that didn't have a father. I'm the one that didn't have these things, right? Mm-hmm. And so, no matter what he did, I'm going to blame him for my hurt. You see what I'm saying? And you got to heal from that piece, man. And I'm in a better place today to realize that it wasn't him. He didn't have to be perfect. But I'm talking about, man, paid bills for us when we left, three months severance. Members of the church came and helped us. He let them come, man. And New Living is where we're at today because of those men, and primarily because my father in the ministry, Troy Smith, man. That's where I'm at today because of them. And those are men and fathers that became examples, that now they're in me today, right? Mm-hmm. It's crazy because and I'll say this and be quiet, my kids would see them in me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about my son right now. I preach, and my son be like, "That's Pastor Webster." You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I don't sound like him per se. That they would see him manifest in me as I'm preaching. Mm. They would see, man, that's Jeffrey as I'm preaching, right? That's Pastor Smith as I'm preaching, as I'm ministering, or as I'm counseling, and it was them. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that I was mimicking per se them, but as Freddie Haynes said, and people see Freddie in me now too, is that it's nothing wrong with being a copycat as long as you're copying the right cat, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah. That's very true. You said some stuff there because it was making me think as I'm sitting here. A lot of times people blame others because of their own hurt, and they don't realize that they're hurt until maybe years down the road, or when they get some counseling, or when they get some healing. Because a lot of times people hurt you as a child, or things happen as a child, and it goes along with you as an adult, and you don't realize it. Like you said, all those men added value in your life. If they didn't add value, then okay, we could have a different kind of conversation. But since they added value, you took whatever value, and now it's in you, and now whoever follows you gonna get examples of great men because you were able to copy a cat that was actually doing good. A lot of times we copy, growing up in like Hallville or where I'm from, we copy hustlers, we copy drug dealers, we copy basketball players, we copy the typical thing, but you started copying men that were showing you how to be a man. Because a lot of times when you don't have a father, you might see somebody that's a man, but they're not a man that's like, because as men, we're told to not be soft and not show emotion and all those different things. But when you actually see a man and he's taking care of his household, he's a husband, he's working, he's in the ministry, it helps you understand, okay, I got a lot to learn. Or, maybe I shouldn't have been mad at such and such back in the day because I didn't know no better. So that's a great example for those that are listening. And it's not just for men, for women too. You got to get around people that'll show you where you want to be. Every single person that I heard you say was where you wanted to be, especially in the ministry. So you got around people that's been down the street, so they could tell you, no, don't make that left turn right there. Keep straight. That's right. So that's good. And then even at the end, you even said your sons, because obviously you had them around you when you were mimicking and studying and those other men. Now they got great men in their life that they can maybe go have a conversation with, because you can't always just be a dad to your kid. You got to put other people around them. But just for them to notice, Dad, that ain't even you, man. That's that's Pastor Taylor. That's whoever it was. That's a good example of putting your kids in the right environment, especially early, especially young black men. Yes. Because you could have a dad, but your dad might be a street guy or whatever he does, and he's taking you with him. You gonna follow that example. Yes. You gonna go down that wrong path. But you got a dad. You might, my dad get on my nerves, but you remember him taking you to church, or you remember him taking you somewhere positive, and putting those seeds in you and adding value at a young age. Because I know your sons, and I can tell that you are active, that you didn't play, and that you set them up for success. Because all your kids are very successful in their own right, and I love to see that. And it kind of made me think about you said when you look for somebody, because when I went to church, my best friend's dad was the preacher, and he was kind of like a father figure. So when I started to go to church after, in college, I was kind of looking for that. I went to, the first church was here. It was New Life. And New Life was too big for me. I'm like, nah, this too big. I'm like a number in here. I don't get to talk to the pastor. And then I think it's when I first met Tiana, we were going to Emmanuel. And Pastor Daryl Webster. Yeah. So shout out to the Webster family.
Yeah, Webster family in the house. Yeah. Webster family in the house. Daryl Webster, one of the examples too, man.
Yeah, he's definitely. And he had men's boot camp.
Yeah, that boot camp powerful, boy.
Yeah. And
you was in that. I remember you told me you was in that piece. Yeah.
And it was 5:45 in the morning. I'm like, okay, I don't know about this 5:45, but just for him, like going to the church and him actually talking to me, I'm like, let me go check this out. And I still have relationships with some of those men. I still have a relationship with him. When he see me, he's excited to see me, ask me how I'm doing. So I definitely found that because like I was looking for that from a shorty, and seeing like my best friend, his dad. Like I remember his dad. I was cutting up in school. My mom took me to that office, and I was in there crying. He ain't whooped me, none of that. He just had a conversation, and sometimes you gotta have those conversations that add value where you think the person is wrong. They, you just trying to, make me feel a certain way, but they're adding value. Because without that conversation, I probably wouldn't have graduated because I was on the wrong path at that time. So now you got the church, and I remember the first time the church was already started, but it was still kind of new. We lived around the corner from the church, and y'all had a community, a neighborhood like event.
Film fest.
Yeah. And Speak, he rapped.
Pastor Rashad Cunningham. Yeah, shout out my son in the ministry. My son is my boy, my firstborn.
Yeah, and I remember hearing him rap. I was like, okay, what's this? And we went to the church, and you was like the coolest pastor I probably seen in a minute, because I don't think you had J's on. One of the first time you had the J's, you had a polo, you was kind of dressed down, and I was like, you don't really see that in church. And then like we were able to, you kind of can dress casual, and I was like, I like this church because I can be me. Because sometimes, like you said before, a church can be judgmental. Yes. I might only got flip flops, a hoodie, and some sweats. Yes. I want to go to church though, but people will look at you different. Yes. But when I came to New Living, it was like, okay, they accepting. It was a little different because I grew up in a all black church, but then you got multicultural church, but then you got you leading. And I'm like, this dude is cool. You look young, and we've been rocking with y'all ever since. I think we might have went to Emmanuel for a short period of time through there, but we came back. You married me and Christian's mom, and I see the progress. And talk about the church. You said you had no members, no money, none of that. And fast forward to now and what's going on with the church and upcoming with the church.
Yeah, man. So we go from no members, no money, no nothing to an open house in 2009. 2 open houses. 80 people came both times. Pastor John, Money, and Kira. Money, man. 2 white persons, a white family, were the first white family to commit to helping us. They brought a few white families with them, man, and just automatically had our church day one with Nigerians, Ivory Coast folk, Haitians, black, white, Hispanics, already day one. Day one we had like 11 nations represented in our church in 2010 when we finally launched our first pre-launch service. And so Zoom now, you're looking at 2022 through COVID. 2020 was one of our highest from January 2020, January, February, and March was our highest attended service. We were thinking about going to 2 services. Our giving was crazy. We had just left our warehouse and was at Claremont Christian Church and was in a good rhythm because we were looking to stay here for a season at Claremont Christian Church and buy some land or buy a property or, go to ownership. We knew there was one more step we needed to take, but we were there, and COVID came through, and the government shut down. You couldn't have 100 people. Then the next week, 50. And then 2 days later, it said you can't have 10, and we said it's over. And so 2020, first time in human history, church shuts down. Man, you got to mind you, 1996, I get saved, I'm in church. All I know is church. I don't, and that bothers me to this day. I don't see how you can't be in God's house. You see what I'm saying? And so when that happened, I'm like, dude, I've been in this 2020. Not only have I just sold out to this thing, but I'm actually an under shepherd in God's house. And it shut down for the first time. And so that was an emotional deal. And at the same time, I'm having marital struggles, which Nicole and I have been struggling for the last 3 years. And it was like, man, so churches shut down, marriages is really bad in this season. And so I go through all of that, and we come out of 2020, hit 2021, finally start coming back to church. People start gathering. We go from, not just online, but also in person. And so make it through 2021. Now we in 2022. I have to go into the second Sunday in 2022. The cool thing about where we're at now, it's unprecedented. It's unfamiliar. It's a level of uncertainty. But as Jeff Foxworthy said, anxiety is contemplating God or the future without God, right? And so I don't want to do that in this season. I believe God is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. He's omnipresent. He's in the past, present, and future. God has already made a way. And so, last year, New Living closed in 2021 through COVID, through members leaving, through political unrest, through people leaving for Trump in our church, instead of, staying for us, loving a party instead of, their pastor. And that was really extremely hurtful. But through all of that, man, our church stepped up to the plate. And through COVID, through scattering, man, we were able to close on 15 acres of land. Right off of Guyan, right back to 46222, right, where I basically matriculated out of, and now I'm matriculating back into, right, for some more learning, in the 46222. So on Guyan, 34th and Guyan, man, we got 15 acres of land. We was able to do a little community fan fest out there. Didn't really get the bite we wanted, but we were out there, and had a great little outing, barbecue, did some things. And so I'm excited, man, about the future of our church. 15 acres of land. The cool thing about that is, too, man, that got financed through the owner of the land. He financed that for us, so we didn't have to get a loan from a bank that helps us later to, finish our architectural work and prayerfully break ground at some point. But yeah, man, I'm excited, man. We don't have the 15 nations represented, but we still got nations. We're still a church that's manifesting heaven on earth, every nation, every tribe, every tongue, seek, sharing, and serving. And we're going to continue to do that, man, and trust God in this season.
Yeah, that's amazing, because like you said, COVID hit. We ain't ever seen stuff shut down, can't do nothing. And then for those of us that like to go to church, that used to going to church, you can't go to church, online church, it's not the same.
Not the same.
And then you try to find, even, you listen to your pastor, you try to find, listen throughout the week and different stuff, and it don't hit the same. But it does give you it gave me a chance to get into my word. I definitely became more of a Bible reader through COVID, but
Awesome.
to lose members, all that. Now you got land. Now you have your own. And
we got land.
We got land. Yeah, we got land. We got land.
That's your land too. That means Eric, you responsible for that land. Ain't just me. I ain't the one. I'm out here by myself. Yeah, we got land.
And it's crazy that you started there. Could have ended there early, but you made it through, and now you fast forward. Now you're back in there to help, to serve, to bring positivity, and not what you brung when you was a shorty or coming up as an adult. So as we're wrapping up, give someone some advice on, they from around the way, they kind of struggling, they don't really know what angle to go at, but how I think I'm gonna name this, what'd you say Chandre said, see it to see it?
Yeah, you gotta see it before you can see it.
See it before you can see it. How can they see it before they can see it without maybe having someone to see it?
Yeah, I think the first thing we need to get, man, is we have to stop putting people on pedestals and putting them at the level of Christ. I think that's his position and his position alone. And then if we're able to do that, I think we'll then give people the benefit of the doubt who are further along than we are. And then realizing too, introspectively looking at yourself and self-assessment of yourself and realizing that you have trauma, you have hurt, you have disappointment, you have all this you bring to relationships, and own that and say the reason you're responding to some pushback from some people that may be trying to shape you and mold you, and they see your hurt, they see your pain, and they see how you're responding to their challenges, their exhortations, and all that other stuff. And that's just the maturation process of you growing in relationship with people who you need. And so I would say, man, if I had any advice for people who are listening to this podcast, go back and look at those relationships that made you who you are. And take the positive piece from that. Not that you don't learn from the negative point. These are things you just don't want to do. I've learned that there's some leadership styles and way of dealing with people that I felt like that wasn't how I would pastor. Didn't mean they were wrong in how they were pastoring. It just meant I wouldn't do that. For example, no suits and ties and dress down, and I'm not trying to be cool. I'm just me. I just felt like why would I be something different in church and then be something different outside of church, right? And so why don't I just be Lil Herb, saved, Norell, full of the Holy Ghost, and be that burning bush that's consumed but not destroyed, right? I'm consumed by God, but you still see Lil Herb, right? And so I'm gonna be that, and it's got a lot of hurt. It's got me hurt, right? Because I haven't put up walls, and somebody told me once you need to have thick skin and a tender heart, because that means you're just letting people close to you. You're gonna be around people, but my advice to people would be get that tough skin and a tender heart. Love hard, love well. If people hurt you, that's just a part of the human experience. That's a part of that. But I think the main piece is, take advantage of those relationships with people, as you said eloquently, is that you need to, people who are further along than you. You want to start that business, people doing podcasts, people doing motivational speaking, pastors who have bought land before, built churches. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sit down, humble yourself, and it may cost, you may need to pay them to do it. You may need to get them $400 to sit you down, i.e. Dr. Ricky McCray, and show you how to have an awesome service online. Shout out to Dr. Ricky McCray, the Way Church, right? If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have had that awesome platform and cameras we have at our church, but he set me down, and I was able to give him some monies, and he shaped our platform, and that's my brother. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, and I remember just real quick with him, he telling me to shut up. Sometimes he telling me to be quiet, like listen, do this, do that, do that, and I humble myself and received, and you see what I'm saying, like. And so that's the thing about relationships. You gotta humble yourself. You gotta, realize that they're not at the level of Christ. Don't put them there. They're not going to be perfect, just like you're not perfect. And stop breaking relationships with people because they're not perfect. You know what I'm saying? You're the one hurt and got trauma and running from this because you're hurt. And so no, man, stick it out, stay with people, and especially the family of God, especially in this season, man. One of the things you just said, and I'll regurgitate and echo, is that's why we need the church, because a lot of us have broken families and the structure of a broken family. We don't have a grandfather, great grandfather. We don't have all these patriarchs, in to look at. So you go to a church and you see Deacon Smith, who's 65 or some 70. He's really your grandpa now. You didn't even know that. And then he teach you how to barbecue, teach you how to do all this, saying at the cookout and all this. Next thing you know, you got pastor right here with kids and other kids. Now you got other kids. Them actually your cousins now. Them your brothers. And you said this church right here.
Yep.
Is actually your family you've been looking for.
Yep.
Right? And guess what? They're just as broken as your biological family. And so, but they have so much more to offer than even your biological family. You winning and don't even know it, and you run from that because it gets hard to grow, in that space because they're gonna stretch you, right? So I'm saying stay in that thing, be stretched, don't break relationships, just off of stuff you don't like from people in particular spaces, especially church. And go ahead and grow, man. It's gonna stretching. We say in our church, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and I think that's what a lot of churches have done to some people, and they run from it before God can actually mature them up in the faith, so they can be awesome men and women in the faith.
Definitely, and you're so right about like your church family being like your family. Give it a little short story. It's a lady. She was the Sunday school lady. She was like my grandma, and her grandson would come and visit, and me and him became close friends. And as an adult, he's the reason why I stepped into the entrepreneurial world, because I seen him. I knew him from a child, and I seen what he could do, and he took me around and showed me, just like Willie did with you. He showed you, that one friend, because we was partying. He was like, "Nah, man, partying's over. That was yesterday. Today we going to work." And he showed me the steps, and without him, I might not have went to the entrepreneurial field and started doing stuff, just because I didn't never see it. And it was off the relationship I got at church from his grandma. His grandma's been passed away since we've been, I think, teenagers, but we still kept that friendship, and we're still cool today. And just like with you and Willie, y'all still cool today. So let people know how they can listen to your word online. If you're in Indianapolis, you can come visit the church, and then just give an encouraging word or some type of analogy that you give, like before
before I get out that piece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. So I would encourage some folk, man, if they looking for not necessarily something different, man, but just something authentic, and just a space of transparency, in a space that's gonna really love you unconditionally. New Living Bible Church, that's the spot, Doc. So now we're worshiping in Claremont Christian Church, 9204 Crawfordsville Road. Best way to get, man, to stay connected like that is go to our website, www.newlivingbiblechurch.org, or download our church app. So you can go get our church app, and that'll give you all the stuff where you can get on Facebook and listen to us live. We live every Sunday on Facebook, man. So just go to our page, like it, and when we go live, it'll notify you. And we're going to be excited, man, this Sunday at 10:30 to do that. And we'll be rolling. Yeah, man, I think for me, man, I think an encouraging word, man, is really in this season. I know a lot of churches are doing a 21-day fast, and they're sacrificing and trying to focus and get in the face of the Lord. And I think of the story of Jehoshaphat, man, in 2 Chronicles 20, when pending invasion and danger was happening, just simply because he did a reform in the nation, not a resolution, which is an intent, but a reformation, which is actually implementation, right? Mm-hmm. He did this, and it created an attack that happened. But the text says he was afraid, and he immediately turned his face to God. I think for us, man, in this season, man, of pandemics, plural, political, all this other stuff, unrest, social injustice, and even the COVID, man, even though we're fearful, even though it's in a season of uncertainty and not knowing what God is going to do, people are all scattered. I think our response is not, when it's fear happening, is not to be paralyzed, but to be mobilized. Allow this season for us to turn our faces back to God. And man, especially the folk who are born again, fire baptized, filled with the Holy Ghost, speaking in other languages and all that other stuff. I think our first response in this season is to turn our faces to God, and that's in prayer. And then, like you said, COVID, the pandemic made you postulate yourself to a space of looking at the principles of the Word of God. And so, as my man Tony Evans said, when things are happening in your life, the best response, as I paraphrase, is to throw God's Word back up in His face. You know what I'm saying? To throw God's Word back up in His face. And I would say this, man. I told my son, I promised him that if he did this or did that, I would give him this on his birthday. I forgot about my promise. I forgot that I told him I would. My son came to me and said, Daddy, you said you would do this and that on my birthday. He said, "You promised." Because I'm a man of my word. What he reminded me of and threw my promise back up in my face, I was required to do. How much more is that with a Heavenly Father that has made a bunch of promises? And so, in order to throw God's word back up in his face, you're going to have to get face to face with God. And you're going to have to know his word so that you can throw back up in his face, I'm the head and not the tail. I'm more than a conqueror. You said you started this thing, you're going to finish it. You know what I'm saying? Whatever it is, you gave me the ability to make wealth. You've given me creative genius. There's no respected person. If he can be a millionaire, so can I. So I'm just saying, throw that word back up in God's face and get face to face with God in this season of failure and even just uncertainty.
If you like that, that's when you go on Facebook, go on the app, New Living Bible Church, and you're not in church all day. It's not one of them where you start at 10:30 and you're there to 12, 1 o'clock. No, you get your worship, you get your word, and you get out the door. I appreciate you for being on the show. Appreciate you. I understood in this situation, sometimes, like you said earlier, you got to shut up. You got to listen. Like sometimes when you have someone that's a little more knowledgeable that can add value, you have to listen. And that's what we got out of this conversation. You see it, and what's it? I can't.
Gotta see it to see it.
You gotta see it to see it.
Man, what I love about you, man, let me tell you something. This brother will take, I know he's heard a lot of no's, and no you can't. But I tell you what, man, this brother right here is major encouragement. I tell you that, man. I talk about you all the time in church and stuff. I'll be talking about you, man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So, yeah, man, just keep going, man. I'm proud of you. You ain't gonna let nobody tell you no. Yeah, man. I'm excited for the future for you, man. Hey, man, just keep pressing forward, man. Greater things to come.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You guys can tune in on YouTube every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. We'll be on iHeartRadio tomorrow. It takes 24 hours for them to do the process, but you can check us out on those. Facebook page and Instagram page is Underdog Talk Podcast. If you got an encouraging story, if you want to be on the show, if you know somebody, email me at Underdog Talk Podcast. See you next week. Oh, wait. What'd I say? Peace, one love, like my mom said.